Huh. You've probably made that sound right. Huh. It just sort of happens. Almost feels like nothing. Barely a sound, definitely not a proper word, like a reflex. But what if that tiny everyday noise is actually something really quite profound? What if it holds some big clues about how human language works, like everywhere?
It really is one of those things, isn't it? It's so baked into how we talk, we just don't notice it. But yeah, this research suggests it's, well, anything but trivial. It's fundamental to keeping conversations going.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're digging into today on the deep dive. We're looking at some really surprising work by Mark Dingemans, Francisco Torreira, and Nick Enfield. They basically asked, is huh a universal word? Not just noise, but an actual word found everywhere.
Right, and the way they went about it is key. This wasn't just armchair speculation. They looked at the real thing, actual recordings of people talking across dozens of languages. We've been reading their original 2013 paper in PLOS 1, and they also put out this really useful FAQ document explaining it all, plus there's follow-up work too.
So yeah, we're going to unpack what they found by looking at how people really speak, across languages you'd think have zero in common. And we'll explore what this little sound tells us about you and how you manage your own conversations, probably without even thinking about it. Let's get into it.
Okay, so the core claims, they're quite bold, really. First, they suggest that a word like huh is very likely universal across spoken languages. And second, that it genuinely counts as a word, not just some, random grunt.
Universal. Okay, hold on. Isn't the first thing you learn about language that words are arbitrary? Like dog sounds nothing like sh or inu. The sound doesn't connect to the meaning. That's the arbitrariness of the sign, isn't it?
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Arbitrariness is, bedrock principle in linguistics. And that's what makes huh so fascinating. It looks like a rare exception. When they say universal here, they mean a word with a very similar form, and the same function is found in, well, all the languages they studied systematically. And that's across really diverse language families, different continents, languages with no recent common ancestor.
So, not identical maybe, but similar enough that it's weird. Like, these languages shouldn't sound alike in this specific way.
Precisely. The similarity across unrelated languages is the puzzle. Now, the second claim, it's a word. Why does that matter? Well, it separates it from things like sneezing or crying out in pain. Those are biological reflexes. They argue, is learned. It's a conventional signal. It even gets adapted slightly into the sound system of each specific language. Kids have to learn how and when to use it. It's not automatic from birth.
Okay, got it. So, not an automatic noise, but a learned signal that somehow ends up sounding almost the same everywhere. That is pretty strange.
It is, and the evidence really hinges on looking closely at its function in conversation. They focus on this thing linguists call other-initiated repair.
Other-initiated repair sounds a bit technical.
Bob chuckles slightly. Yeah, it does, but it's really simple when you think about your own conversations. It's just that moment when, you didn't quite catch what someone said.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't hear it or you didn't understand, and you need to signal that. You need to get them to fix the problem, like repeat or clarify.
Ah, right, like saying what or sorry or huh.
Exactly. It happens constantly. It's a basic problem any conversation faces, so you need a quick fix. And this shared problem creates what they call a universal conversational environment.
Makes sense. If you can't quickly signal, hold on, I missed that, the whole conversation just collapses, right?
Right. And what they found was this surprisingly consistent form for the word used to do this job across all these languages. First, it's always short, just one syllable.
Okay.
Second, the vowel sound is always in this very specific restricted zone, low front or central vowels, like the A in father or E in bet, and always unrounded.
Unrounded vowels, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
And third, if there is a consonant sound at the start, it's minimal, usually just an H sound or maybe a glottal stop that little catch in uh-oh.
huh.
And finally, the intonation. It always sounds like a question, often rising, like our English, huh?
Yeah.
But, and this is important, it can be falling in some languages, like Icelandic or Chapala in Ecuador. If falling intonation is how questions normally work in that language, it fits the local system.
Wow. Okay, so super quick to say, easy vowel sound, barely a consonant, always signals a question in the local style.
But that's the pattern they kept finding. And the how was important too. They didn't just rely on dictionaries or, asking people what they think they say. Intuitions about these little words can be really fuzzy.
They looked at actual talk, messy, real conversations.
That's right. They analyzed recordings of people just talking informally. They started with about 200 examples from 10 languages, but then expanded massively. The main study covered 31 languages from 16 different unrelated language families all over the globe: Europe, Asia, Australia, South America. They specifically chose languages that were unlikely to share this word through inheritance or recent borrowing.
And people have checked this since that first paper.
Yes, absolutely. Other research teams have found the same basic pattern, this minimal questioning repair initiator, in lots more languages. The FAQ mentions over 10 more confirmed languages since 2013. The evidence keeps building.
Okay, the evidence seems strong. Consistent form, universal function, found in diverse languages, but my brain still wants the simple answer. Couldn't it just be like an innate grunt, something we're all born doing, like crying when we're hurt?
That's a fair question. It's definitely the first thing many people think. But the researchers argue against it. It's not involuntary like a sneeze. You choose to say, huh, at a very specific moment to solve a specific conversational problem. It's targeted. Plus, kids actually have to learn it. They get good at it around age 5, which is much later than innate sounds appear. And there isn't really a clear equivalent in animal communication for this specific function. So while innateness isn't impossible, they argue the cultural explanation fits the facts better without needing to assume it's hardwired.
Okay, so probably learned, not just a reflex. What about inheritance then? Like English and German have similar words because they evolved from the same ancestor language.
Yeah, that explains a lot of similarities, but not this one. Like we said, they found, like words and languages that are completely unrelated, comparing, say, Dutch with Chapala from Ecuador, or Murni Patha from Australia, or Mandarin Chinese. These language families split off tens of thousands of years ago, maybe more. Inheritance just doesn't work over those timescales for a specific word form like this.
Right, too different, too far back. Okay, what about borrowing? Like how, okay, spread everywhere, language contact.
That's another good thought. And OK is a perfect example of recent global spread through contact, media, culture. But words like OK or internet are recent. The need to signal "I didn't understand" is ancient. It's existed as long as conversation has. And they found this pattern in places geographically very far apart, with little chance of recent contact influencing this specific word. So the global pattern doesn't look like it's caused by recent spread or borrowing.
Okay, so if it's not an innate grunt, not ancient inheritance, and not recent borrowing, what's left? What is their explanation for this really striking similarity?
Their main hypothesis is convergent cultural evolution.
Emergent cultural evolution. Okay, need you to break that down for me.
Okay, think of their analogy from biology: sharks and dolphins.
Right. Fish and mammal. Look similar but aren't closely related.
Exactly. They both have streamlined bodies, fins, flippers. But they didn't inherit that shape from recent common ancestor. They evolved those features independently because they faced the same environmental pressure, moving efficiently through water. So the environment pushed them towards a similar solution. They converged.
Okay, I get the biology. Sharks, dolphins, water pressure. How does that work for
So the environment isn't water, it's the conversational environment. Specifically, that universal problem of other-initiated repair needing to signal non-understanding fast. This shared problem creates similar selective pressures on the form of the word used for this job. It pushes different languages independently towards a similar kind of solution because that solution is highly efficient for the task.
And what are those specific pressures in conversation?
Two main ones seem to be key for shaping hunt. First, there's immense pressure for minimal effort. Think about it. You've just missed something. You're momentarily confused, you have almost no time to plan what to say, you need something super easy and quick to produce. And the form they found, one syllable, simple open vowel, minimal or no consonant, is basically the easiest sound humans can make quickly from a neutral mouth position. It's the path of least resistance.
Right, you're not going to stop and craft a long, complex sound. You just need something out now.
Precisely. Then the second pressure, you need to signal a question or a knowledge gap. It's not just noise. It has to tell the other person, there's a problem, I need input from you. And that questioning intonation, whether rising or falling according to the local language rules, does that job perfectly. It prompts the other person to respond, usually by repeating.
So it's the combination. Needing it to be incredibly fast and easy, plus needing it to clearly ask for help. That combination pushes different languages towards something like,
That's the core idea. Convergent evolution driven by the pressures of interaction. They even note that sometimes people use even more minimal forms, like just a closed mouth M or N sound, especially when close to someone. Still fits the minimal effort plus question idea.
Wow. And you mentioned sign languages earlier. How does that fit in?
Yeah, that's a really cool confirmation, actually. They point out that in sign languages, you also find very minimal ways to ask for repair. Often it's a quick, simple sign combined with a facial expression, like raised eyebrows. And that eyebrow raise functions just like questioning intonation does in speech. It signals the question. So it shows the same underlying pressures, minimize effort, signal a question shaping the form, just in a different modality, visual instead of auditory.
This is really making me think differently about just talking. So, what are the bigger takeaways here? Why should we care if ha is universal?
Well, for you personally, I think it just shows how vital these tiny, almost invisible bits of language are. That little is like this crucial tool you use all the time without thinking, just to keep the conversation aligned, to stay on the same page. Smooth talk would be much harder without it.
Yeah, I can see that. And what about for understanding language itself?
I think the really big implication is that it challenges that strong version of the arbitrariness of the sign idea. It suggests that maybe not all word forms are purely arbitrary historical accidents. The demands of real-time social interaction can actually exert pressure, can shape the very sounds and forms of language through cultural evolution.
So, interaction doesn't just use language, it can actually form language. That kind of flips the usual view, doesn't it?
It does, a bit. It adds another layer. And this study was part of bigger research looking at how we collaboratively fix communication problems. It's just one tool, maybe the most basic one, in our repair toolkit. And the researchers speculate this same kind of process, convergent evolution driven by interactive needs, might also explain similarities in other common little discourse markers we use constantly. Things like or uh-huh to show you're listening, or and when you pause, or oh when you realize something.
Huh. Okay. So, that quick huh, you might say without thinking.
Yeah, it's not just a noise. It's likely a super efficient, culturally evolved word, part of a potential universal toolkit shaped by the basic needs of talking to each other.
So, maybe think about this. If a sound as simple as huh turns out to be this sophisticated tool shaped by how we interact.
What are the little things that you do or say when you talk? Maybe sounds, maybe gestures, maybe just timings. What else might be shaped not just by your specific language, but by the universal pressures of human conversation itself? What else are we all doing without even realizing it?